Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have another law enforcement officer, previous law enforcement officer today, who I know through another group that I'm part of. And so, today we have Ryan Chartrand. Here, he is a former police officer of 18 years. So he has almost double what I did, which is going to be amazing to talk about. He's now doing financial advising for police officers, which is amazing as well because I feel like it is a very needed area because we all bitch about how much money we earn. But as usual, remember, guys, come follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all those fun things. Create from Y or Knocking Demon Coaching, but also get a pen and piece of paper or just put your listening ears on, and I want you to take one thing away from this conversation. I always talk about just finding that one little nugget and running with it because we don't want to overcomplicate the brain. It is a very fine thing that can get overcomplicated a lot of times unless you're used to it. So take one thing away from this, whatever resonates with you, and then come back and listen to it again. Listen through its entirety, and whatever impacts you the most, take it, run with it, use it. Now, Ryan, why don't you go ahead, as we always like to do, introduce yourself. Where did you police? Where do you live? All that good different stuff, and then we'll kind of go into kind of your experiences with burnout or what you've seen within your career, all of those kinds of fun things.
Absolutely. First off, I really appreciate you having me on the show, Chris. I love talking about these type of things to help everyone that we can. So, as you mentioned earlier, I was a police officer for 18 years in Massachusetts, and I started out fresh out of college. I was still finishing up college, and I got hired as a part-time police officer in my hometown in Massachusetts. And I always laugh. I was the ripe age of 22 years old. I had a police chief who had probably started policing in the 1970s, and he gave me a badge, a gun, and keys to the police car, and he said, "Here you go, sport. It's sink or swim." And off I went. And I look back now, and it's absolutely nuts. And I'm lucky that I didn't get myself or anyone else killed while I was doing that because I had no idea what I was doing. And the first person that I pulled over, I think I was more scared than they were when I pulled them over. So I had always dreamed of being a police officer in my hometown. Unfortunately, I'll make a long story short, I did not end up getting a full-time position in town. I waited for 4 years to get a full-time position. They started laying people off. I was getting older and getting farther away from a full-time spot. So I transferred to another police department where I served full-time for 14 years until I moved on in 2020.
Oh wow. So that means that you started in like 2002 in that kind of
2002,
part-time role?
yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So no police academy or anything like that before you did the part-time, or had you already done police
So
academy?
they send you to like a night school. I think when I went, it was like 100 hours, and I'd literally get out of my college class and drive over to the night police academy, and they taught you a couple of the basic laws and stuff like that. And honestly, I came out of there thinking I was ready to save the world. And the first call I was dispatched to, I realized I had no clue what I was doing.
How'd that bring reality to you? Like with that first call where you're like, I know nothing, because I know like we do 17 weeks. I think it is here now. We did 19 weeks down at police college. We call it instead of academy. And you do a lot of stuff. You do all your hand-to-hand combat. You do your arresting. You do your handcuffing. You do all the laws, all that kind of stuff. But then you get thrown out there and you're like, holy crap, like I thought I knew a lot, but I know nothing. And like you're thrown in the deep end, to be perfectly honest. But you have your partner there and you kind of do it. But what was it like for you? Like, what was that sphincter factor?
It was realizing that I had to rely on the other officers there.
Mm,
There was a lot of, just gaining that experience and figuring stuff out,
mm,
using what you knew and then just being willing to ask for help. So it
yeah.
was such a small town. It was usually I worked a lot of midnights, and it was me and usually another patrolman. Sometimes there wasn't even a supervisor. It'd just be the two of us. And it was a quiet town, so usually nothing happened. However, when something did happen, it was usually kind of strange and kind of crazy.
Yeah. I remember when I first started policing, worked out of a station called North. It's the North Shore Police Station, And everybody used to give all the North Shore cops crap. They used to be like, all you do is you just sit around and you drink coffee all day and, eat cake. And ours is cake here, not donuts. I was like, yeah, it's busier now. But when I was in, I got there and I was like, yeah, it is pretty, pretty quiet most of the time, which means you're able to be proactive and do stuff. But at the same time, when things happen, they really happen, and you're like, okay, whoa, what am I doing again now? So how'd you find doing that part-time stuff and getting thrown straight into the deep end? How did that help you with your policing career once you went full-time?
So especially going to the actual police academy, because when I transferred to my new department, I went to the full-time police academy, which was about 22 weeks.
Yeah.
And academically, it was pretty much mostly review, and I was doing things for the second, if not the third time that I'd learned it in college, learned it in the part-time police academy, then really getting that base of knowledge. So academically, it was easy. As far as the physical things and mindset training, I could tell that I really needed that. And I was glad to get that, and really saw a mindset shift for survival and personal defense and defense tactics and those type of things that I got in the full-time academy that I was able to then take out onto the road with me when I left.
When you say mindset training, can you just expand a little bit on that?
I guess realizing the severity of things that are out there, and let me rewind a little bit. And I guess this is an interesting time to bring it in is the transition from department to department for me didn't necessarily go smoothly.
Okay.
And now I came up from a town that was, when I worked there, was probably 14,000 people. We had a department of about 16. We had a mall in the town, but it wasn't really near a city or anything like that. And there wasn't much that went on. And I was definitely almost like a small town atmosphere. I transferred to a town that was right next to a major city in Massachusetts. It was a department of about 45 guys instead of 16, and a lot busier. The call volume was a lot more. There was more serious stuff going on up there. I didn't realize that when I went up there, and to say I wasn't prepared for it was probably true. And I was naive. I hadn't seen a lot. Really, I think a lot of us come into policing and we don't necessarily have the mindset that we're going to be the ones that get thrown into situations that you see on TV or unexpected situations. You think it's going to go smooth. It's going to be just a normal career. You don't ever expect to be in a extremely serious situation. I think that's where I was coming from. I don't think I realized the reality of what I was actually doing. Excuse me. So I transferred to the new department, and it was going to be about 6 weeks before the police academy was starting. So that chief was letting me ride along on the road. I'd been on the road, so I was going with a partner, learning the town, waiting to go to the academy. The first night that I was there, I didn't even know the guys. I had just met my sergeant. We responded to a call. Partner I was with and I went in to check a house. We're going up the stairwell, and the person upstairs in the house shot my partner in the stomach.
Whoa.
Yes.
And so you haven't even been to academy yet.
Nope, I haven't been to the academy yet. I've known the person that I'm with for maybe 2 hours. I've known the guys that I'm working with on the road for about 3 hours. And yeah, that happens.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that?
Oh, that was it wasn't easy. I mean, that's a process that I went through, and I still talk about today, and how I got myself through it. How I came to grip, so to speak, with what happened and everything. But first off, it was honestly just gut reaction and doing what I needed to do, getting the officer, out of the house and making sure he was attended to, help was coming, making sure the person that shot him was taken care of, that he wasn't a threat to us or anyone else anymore.
Yeah.
And I just remember once backup got there, once my partner was taken away in the ambulance and everything, I remember I had the conversation I had with my new chief, and he said, is how do you put it? As long as nothing unforeseen happens, we'll get you into the academy and the next academy. And I just remember standing outside, middle of the night, pitch black. I don't even know where I am because I'm about 40 or 50 miles away from where I grew up and what I was familiar with. No clue where I even am. And that him saying that is echoing through my head. As long as nothing unforeseen happens, as long as nothing crazy happens. And I was literally saying to myself, oh, I always wanted to be an auto mechanic. I guess that's an option.
Jeez. Did first off, did the officer survive?
Yes, he did. He did.
Cool.
Thankfully. God.
Thankfully. All right. So how do you, first shift pretty much in this new place, you barely know these guys. You go into this house. How did that set you up for your policing career moving forward?
So first off, it was especially the next few days and weeks, even months, it was a challenge for me internally. I don't think I showed it on the outside. I don't know if anyone really knew. I went right back to work 2 days later, thrown back into the mix, and it was not working. They were kind enough to give me a couple days off and suggested that I go, I think a lot of people know what it is, the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. They, gave me the card for that. They said, here, call someone and talk to that. Literally, I talked to that guy twice. He told me I was fine and go back to doing what I was doing. And, that's one thing I say now is, that was a struggle. Here I was, later on in my career, having, saying, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Because a professional told me I was fine and go back to work. So that was a challenge. But the biggest thing that got me through it and that set me up for the police officer and even the person that I became was that realizing, and that was before I even developed, knew what this mindset was, but I realized that incident prepared me for my career. That incident happened to make me a better police officer. That incident prepared me to be prepared to defend myself, to be better prepared to going in situations, because I was going to make sure that never happened again to me. And I shouldn't say never happened again, that when I was more ready for that situation to be happen, better prepared for a situation like that, and more tactically prepared to maybe prevent a situation like that.
Yeah. No, it's so true. So, and it's, how long did it take you from that incident where, you were struggling, for the better of, words, struggling in that you were told, okay, you're fine, by a professional. I had the same thing first time I went to the police counselor, and that he's like, yep, no, you're good. Just go carry on. And then for me, it came flooding back, but eventually, but how long did it take you to get to that realization, hey, this incident actually has better prepared me. It has helped me set up things. It's made me think differently. It's made me, actually, walk into situations differently. How long did it take you to realize that it happened for you, not to you?
Thinking back, it was, I didn't realize that that's what I was doing, because I definitely, right now I have that mindset towards everything, every single thing. And I preach that mindset. I don't think I realized that mindset. However, that's how I realized it through experience. And I think it grew over time. It was pretty evident. And maybe when I want to say it, probably when I got out of when I completed the police academy, I definitely saw I saw and I felt the respect that I had earned, even from colleagues and even from instructors in the academy, because I'd been through that situation and I was still there.
Yeah.
I was still there. I was still plowing forward, still being strong. And then seeing how I began to perform and how I was prepared going out in the field, especially when I was done with field training and was out on my own and patrolling the streets on my own, I think I realized it more and more over time how I felt I was better prepared. I was better tactically because of it.
Yeah, nah, that's awesome. And so, if you could go back and teach yourself something before you joined the police force, what would be the number one thing?
Oh, man, I don't, a lot of the stuff I learned was because of experience, and it's the type of things you learn to type of things you're only going to learn through experience. If I was going to teach myself something, I think it would probably be to involve myself in the profession, not in a sense as it is the culture and the internal culture and the internal nonsense of the police department, but in the sense of self-education and personal development wise, enthrall myself in the profession to become a professional knowledge wise, and be able to perform stronger as a professionally, I guess, knowledge based.
Yeah. So would that be like a mental preparation side of things, or would it be so that you can better, evaluate situations and evaluate yourself and your emotions and your feelings and your logic and the tasks that you do? Is that what you're trying to say?
So all around, just not knowledge of the job, of the laws, and the leadership aspect. And instead of going down, prepared myself that instead of going down, getting sucked into the culture and the negativity of the job, to from the very beginning remain and keep myself on the positive side of the job and on a positive trajectory going that way.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, no, I can totally. Yeah, I'll put my hand up for that's what I should have done as well. Um, because it's so easy to get drawn into that negative side of policing. There's a culture there, and in the U.S. there's a longer culture there than over here, even in New Zealand. What would be, did you ever get drawn into that negative culture of the police?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And, ultimately it's being drawn into that and developing that, going down that road that made me really start to hate, if not despise, going to work.
so is that when you would you call that, would you call that you're kind of when you burning out in the police, burning out in what you were doing?
So I knew there were a couple of things that made me realize that that I needed to make a decision, that maybe it was time for me to go.
Yeah.
And, a couple of the things were I was getting to the age that is most common when we look at the Officer Down Memorial page. It's officers, most frequently, it's officers that are in their 40s,
Yeah.
officers that have been on about 15 to 20 years. And I knew I was getting into that prime. And I saw myself doing things and acting in ways that there's no better word for it. I was getting sloppy. I was too comfortable with doing the job. I was starting to get sloppy, in which I do things and I tell myself afterwards, dude, you are going to get yourself killed. And it's just that level of comfort that you grow into because you're doing those things so over and over and over again. You start to lose that fear, that edge that you have at the beginning, that unsurety. And the other thing was that definitely is what described burnout for me, is that I would be sitting in the car and I really would have no desire to do anything proactively as far as going and pulling over cars or doing anything like that. I'd always drive my neighborhoods, interact with people that way. But as far as finding criminals and stuff like that, I had no desire to go find criminals. And I'd sit there in the car and twiddle my thumbs and complain that I was bored and I didn't have anything to do. And then when the radio went off to send me to a call to give me something to do, I'd be mad that I had to go to a call and had to go deal with a call.
Yeah, that's burnout for you. So, okay. So So you got to a stage where you identified that you started to fall into that group of individuals that is the ones that are that are taken from us before they're meant to. But you also identified why. Did you identify why then, or was it afterwards that you identified why you were feeling like why you could be possibly one of those ones on the wall? That sloppiness, that loss of fear, that what we used to call it complacency, because you just
Yep.
it's like autopilot. Did you identify that in the job while you were in the job, or was it afterwards?
Nope, absolutely. I knew it, and that was another thing is that I would tell myself, when we start, there's always those cops that we say, I'm never going to be like that when I've been on, I'm still going to be this ball of freaking fire, right? And all of a sudden, I'm telling myself, I'm like, dude, you are the cop that you said you would never become. And that's where you're at.
So obviously, I'm a man of you have choices in life. So obviously at that moment, if we think back on it, you had two choices. You had either I change my ways or I hand in my papers. What made you decide to hand in the papers and not
So,
just change the ways and change who just start to work on changing who you were and getting back to the person who you used to be or wanted to be?
and this is where I bring in all of that, things happen for me, not
Mm,
to me.
yeah.
Is that it was a gradual fall to the absolute bottom where it was like I got to get out of here. So it was about 4 years before I left that I was introduced to someone in the financial services industry.
Yeah.
And when we talked, he asked me, he said, if you could change one thing about your job, what would it be? I said, I wish I didn't have to work one more overtime, or in Massachusetts, we have details. You go out, you flap your arms around a hole on the side of the road, and yeah, you make good overtime money and everything, but it is boring as all hell. So I wish I didn't have to do one more of those. I wish I could do my 40 hours and I didn't have to work any overtime. So he offered me the opportunity to learn how to work part-time in the financial services industry. He got me all of my licensing, and I started doing that part-time. So instead of working overtime in details, I'd help people with their finances and stuff. And I fell in love with that job. I fell in love with the industry and the culture in that industry. And more and more, I was waiting to go home because I wanted to go work on my other job and be in that environment. And so I kind of had that gradual decline into, well, you know what, I have somewhere else to go. So I see everything that's going on. I see where I'm at here. One of the sayings I love saying is, we only get one ride on this rock. I'm
Mm,
going to enjoy it. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I put myself in a position through what I learned in the financial services industry. I put myself in a position that I could take that chance. And I said, the worst thing that happens, if I take this chance, go out and make the change, and I fail, then I go back and I work for a different police department. That was the worst thing that would happen.
yeah. How, because I know when we're in the depths of being burned out and being in that place of I know you were lucky you had that transition kind of side of things. Um, how did you how obviously you had somebody who said something about what made it so that was it just the questions that he asked you that made you kind of go, hey, wait a second, there's more options out there?
I'm gonna have to rewind even further. There
Cool.
was a day I had not been on the job full time that long. It was less than 5 years.
Yeah.
And at this point, I was in a very bad habit of, at the end of the day, to wind down, I'd have a little moonshine, a couple beers and everything. And
Yeah.
so it was the middle of summer. I was out working one of those details, flapping my arms in the middle of the road around one of the trucks that was doing work on the power lines. I'm in the baking sun. It's about 95 degrees out and everything. I'm still feeling the headache from the moonshine the night before and everything. And I'm bored out of my mind, and I start counting on my fingers how many years I had left that I had to do that job. And it was, at that point, it was over 20. I almost had a panic attack in the middle of the road. I said to myself, I can't do this for 20 more years. There's no way. I cannot keep doing this. I said, yes, my paycheck was awesome, but I was out here in the middle of the road pretty much every day doing this. I said, if the only way to make more money is to do this more, and the more overtime I do, the more angry I am and unhappy I am. And I can't just, and this was my mentality at the time, I can't survive on base pay. I was already top step. I knew I had already reached the ceiling of my income, besides hoping the town would give us a small, 1% raise a year or whatever, that doesn't even keep up with the cost of health insurance. And I didn't know what else I could do. I said, Jesus, what else am I going to do? I'm a cop. This is the path I picked. I'm going to have to deal with it for the rest of my life. This is the life I chose. At one point I Googled jobs you could make $100,000 a year at without a college education, to see what was out there, out of curiosity, and it was, I never imagined the huge world of opportunities that there are out there.
Yeah. So at 5 years, you were already starting to go down what I call the rabbit hole. Um, why'd you join the police force in the first place?
It was all I ever wanted to do from the time I was a child. Um, my
Why?
my grandfather was a firefighter. My uncle was a police officer in town. I actually worked with him when I started as a part-time police officer. From being a child, all I watched was police shows, and I had this vision of myself being that hero, being that one that was catching the bad guys, that was saving people who were in trouble. I knew that was what I was meant to do.
Hmm. But yet, a few years in, you're like, this isn't what I want to do anymore.
And I think if going to work was that, and I think a lot of police officers deal with this too, if it was that constant chase of action, if you were constantly, going to bank robberies and going and saving people here and chasing people there,
What the movies show law enforcement is.
those of us that go be police officers, we'd never quit. If that was the case, we'd be, oh, that would be so much fun.
I think we'd burn out a lot faster though as well. Like just our adrenals would be so drained all the time that we wouldn't know which way was up. No, the reason I bring that up is because obviously I do a lot with law enforcement and first responders, and future first responders. And what I've kind of identified, and I know we've talked about this a little bit in the past, is that why, or that internal purpose. And, I wanted to join the police because because of the movie SWAT. That was really one of the big things, is watching those movies like SWAT, where you're like, that's what I want to do. I want to be the guy that goes busting doors. And so that's what actually from day one I talked about. Never actually got there. Instead, I became Secret Service as such. Which was a development in its own. But if I look back and I reflect on my policing, and I know anybody who's kind of listened or followed us for a while will know this, but my purpose to join was to create less pain for people. I didn't know that. I couldn't articulate it. I know we've had a conversation about this in the past, but when I was living from that, what I was doing didn't matter so much. So the day-to-day, the having to do traffic, the having to, sit on cordons and for a whole shift and literally sit in my car and do Sudoku in the car while I sat there for 8 hours or 10 hours, didn't matter because I would be creating less pain for somebody else, or if I focused on it that way. What would you say those times when you were in the flow of policing? Not so much the action of it, because I know the action does it, and that's because the adrenaline's pumping, the heart race is going, and so we get very laser focused on kind of what's going on. The masculinity side of us comes out. What would you say was your purpose as such, or what was the driver behind all of that?
Now that you put it that way, I look, and it even holds true in what I'm doing now is that satisfaction and pride of serving others and making them feel better than they did before they came into contact with you.
Mm.
And my favorite part of the job was just going and interacting with the public in the, oh, what's the right word to describe it? Like one of my last really happy, simple memories of being a police officer was probably one of my last days on patrol, if not my last day on patrol, was going to a simple 911 hang up call. I want to check in on it. And it was a little kid that was playing on the phone and getting down and talking to his mom and getting down and high-fiving him and having him say, get to meet a police officer and everything, and being involved in the public in that aspect. I absolutely loved when I could work with a victim of a crime. One of my favorite cases that I worked on was someone he had about I think it was about $60,000 of antique collectibles that were stolen from him. And when I actually got those back and saw the smile on his face when I returned those to him after I had gotten them back from the person that had taken them, there was so much satisfaction there, more satisfaction in that than actually, as I said before, you go and you have that, we'll use the bank robber, you go and you chase and you catch the bank robber and you drag the bank robber to jail. Ultimately, you're in there booking the bank robber and he's shitting all over you and giving you a hard time, being a pain in the ass. There's no satisfaction there. You're like, what the heck am I doing? The chase was fun, but that's about it. Yeah. But the satisfaction of being able to help someone, put a smile on their face and have them so grateful for what you were able to help them with was extremely satisfying. And I even see that now in what I do now in working with a client. When they come in, they might be worried or concerned about their future, or their budgeting or whatever. And I can give them some strategies and they walk out, even if they don't become a client, they walk out feeling better about their situation, knowing what to do going forward. I get satisfaction out of that. I absolutely love it. I couldn't be more happy with being able to help someone in that manner.
So if we take that into account then, when we look back over the policing career, and I think this is so important for any law enforcement or any person that's out there, but we'll talk about law enforcement, but if you're not law enforcement or first responder, apply it to what you're doing now as well. If you take that and you applied it to, let's go hindsight's amazing, but we can't learn or become a better person unless we actually work through and actually see how we could have done better, previously and learned, and then that's how we grow. And if we're not growing, we're dying. How, if you had taken that, and this is more for probably those that are wanting to get in or those that are already in and want to really try and stay in because they do feel that at times, how could you have, if you had taken what you just said there and you had focused and applied it within your policing career, how would that have looked differently?
Wow, that is a tough one. I think maybe I think I would have sought out more situations that I could have put myself into, that I would have been able to provide that type of service and be that type of officer and person, through the community, through meeting with people, rather than being on the constant lookout for bad guys and going to find that criminal and those type of things.
Yeah. So instead of trying to search the adrenaline, you would have been searching it from an internal purpose and what actually drives and makes you happy instead of the heart race.
Absolutely. And I mean, that would have been, that is still a phenomenal service for police officers to provide to the community too. Just being that person, that person out there, that person spreading happiness, being there, that's always there to help.
Let me ask you this, because this is an interesting one, and it's an interesting conversation with law enforcement, especially. If you had taken that, and let's just look at the offenders or the defendant or criminal, whatever word you want to put on them. If you had taken that and applied it to them, what kind of impact do you think you could have made possibly on offender and defendants' lives?
That's another interesting question. It's I I'm still finding myself jaded from that side, because that was one thing I would try to do at times when I would see that. I'd try to talk to those people and try and give them encouragement, try to give them some ideas that they could implement to change their lives. And maybe it wasn't, I am a true believer of extreme ownership, so I definitely don't want to put it on them. I guess maybe I could have found, maybe with my knowledge now and all the things I've done since that time, I might be better equipped to actually serve those people in a better way. And I think one of the big things I've learned is asking better questions of them as well. I think when I tried to be maybe an inspiration to them, I was probably preaching to them. And they weren't in a situation to listen. Whereas if I was able to ask better questions of them, maybe I could have helped them discover some ideas themselves.
Yeah, no, I think that's so. And the reason I bring that up is because, as we see, we're both ex-law enforcement. We've seen enough of it. The offender's a piece of crap. I'm here for the victim. How often does that happen? Well, I was in it. I used to say the same thing. Screw them. Just lock them up. Throw away the key. We're worried about the victim. Let's look after the victim, or the community. And it's all, if we actually take and we apply our internal purpose and the reasons why we joined the job in the first place, the easiest way to prevent burnout is to run from that and apply it. Now, offenders and defendants and that, the criminal is the hardest person because we normally don't see the outcome from it. Whereas a victim or somebody who's in that place of pain is instantly like, oh my God, thank you. And so it's also focusing on, what are your thoughts around focusing on it from an internal perspective, focusing on the capability of what you actually have, not what you're doing, but what you actually have and what you're doing for yourself. So then it actually portrays out to others.
I mean, that's huge, I mean, I really hope people are listening to this, that there are police officers listening to this, and because, it's definitely something that I could have used, 4, 5, 10 years ago.
Yeah. So I could have used it 10 years ago too. That's why we're here. But it is, it's passing that knowledge on, because without that growth, we're seeing the decline as such of, in a way, of policing. I think, we're seeing there's a shift, there's a change happening because people don't like the old ways of the way policing was done, the hard exterior, the adrenaline junkie searching officer, which is the one who's just wants to chase bad guys and drive fast cars and shoot cool guns. That's an adrenaline junkie. That's not a real caring officer, which I feel like that's what we are. We have to care the most, because if we don't care the most, who will?
Yep.
And
it's one thing I always saw. I considered myself one of them. As I said, the best police officers that I worked with were the guys that they had the biggest hearts in the world, that they could take a victim, take a child, hug them, do whatever they needed. They could be the softest, gentlest giant in the world. However, when we needed to, we could turn into absolute savages to protect ourselves and to protect our brother officers.
And I think that's a real important thing there to remember as well. And I know I can only speak from my own experience, but I know emotionally wise, I disconnected because I gave so much and so much was taken from me that I never actually, I was always searching that external validation of people giving it back to me, but it never happened. Or I never saw it happen. It probably did happen, but I just wasn't focused on it or wasn't open to it because of my own past traumas, my own past childhood, my own past crap. How have you dealt with your past stuff pre-policing, and how do you believe it would have been different for your policing career if you had dealt with it before you became a police officer?
Wow. I think that's where the culture aspect comes into play of policing. I think I would have been better prepared to deal with the culture, the different personalities, and better able to, I guess, not be concerned with being me. And you bring back, searching for that external validation, being confident in my own skin, confident who I was being as far as my actions, how I was serving, and been confident and fulfilled with that, knowing that I was doing the right things, and not without being repetitive, not constantly seeking that approval from every single person that I worked with.
I feel that's a huge thing. I do feel that a lot of cops, myself in particular, and a lot of people that I've talked to, and if you listen to the language that they use, the bosses don't get us. The bosses are, what's this policy? The politicians don't understand us. The media don't understand us. Is all searching for external validation instead of going, well, what am I doing today to make the world a better place? What am I doing today, as you said, to make sure that I'm leaving somebody feeling better than when I first interacted with them? For me, how am I creating less pain for somebody today? We then start to police from us instead of everybody else. And if we can police from us, then far out, man, we can make a massive impact, because at the end of the day, if we could eliminate all offenders because we could make them a better person, holy crap, we would lose our jobs, but it'd be a better world. It'll never happen, but it is that thing of, we'll feel better. What would you say to those officers that are just starting or are looking at joining? From using the experience that you've had, because that's mentors. That's what a mentor is. Is it somebody that we want to be like, or we want to learn from? So if you were going to mentor somebody who is wanting to get in, or who's recently got in, what would be the things that you would say to them to mentor them the most?
I think the first would be to trying to spit it out right here. Make sure that they're making themselves proud of the way they're acting and the way they're carrying themselves first. Stay in that positive mindset. Go to work every day with the intention of doing a good deed, doing good, putting good out into the world. Do everything you can to not let the attitudes of some people affect you and bring you down. Make sure that you have your personal core values, and make sure you have a mission statement of what you're there for. Why am I doing this? What's my personal mission statement? Especially if there's not one of the department, what is your personal mission statement for being a police officer? And make sure every day when you go to work, you're working on your mission, you're serving your mission, and that your actions are aligning with your core values.
That's probably, for me, that one, that's what I call your internal purpose, your why, the why statement. Mine, which I now know, is to create less pain for myself and others, so we create the best version of ourselves. It's what I live by every single day. So I'm gonna reinforce that one. Everything you said is powerful, important, and but with that mission statement, the rest fall into place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love it. Mission statement. That's a different way of looking at it. That's a good thing. I might have to steal that.
Chris, one thing I just want to say is that I am grateful for every second that I was able to serve as a police officer. I think if I had a wish, if I could go back and change something, what I would change is my own attitude that I developed about the job. However, I can't go back and change that. And I know, again, I've mentioned it a couple times. I know that everything that happened to me during my career, from not fulfilling my dream of working my career in my hometown, from coming to the new town and being involved in the shooting right off the bat, I know that every single thing that happened to me during my career happened for me,
Yeah.
and has led me to where I am right now, which I'm very happy about. And I know 100% for a fact that I am exactly where I am supposed to be right now.
Yeah. And this is the amazing thing is that, none of what we've said today is about, is about wishing that things were different. It's about helping those that are coming up behind us so that they can learn from what we've done and experienced and seen and acted, so that they can implement some of that into their life
Absolutely.
in the way that we go, hey, I learned from that. It's happened for me, so I'm where I am now. Take these little nuggets of knowledge and apply them into your life so you don't repeat our history. Everybody, somebody, I'm on some other police pages and stuff like that as well, and somebody posted in there, history repeats itself. It is what it is. And I was like, no, history doesn't repeat itself unless you just don't learn from it. That's why history keeps repeating itself, is because we're not learning from it. We are sitting in the same thing and just expecting a different result. What is that? That's called insanity. And somebody goes, no, that's training. I was like, only if you're getting a different result. Only if you're doing something different, you're getting a different result. You can do the same thing over and over again and get different results every time. That's not insanity. So, it's real important. So, okay, so obviously, you've said a few times you do financial advising for, I believe it's for police officers mostly, isn't it?
Police officers and firefighters.
Perfect. I love it. It's something that, what's one of the number one things that police and firefighters and first responders bitch about? I'm not making enough money. So let's get financially educated. So what is one thing, I know you can't give advice, so I don't want anybody to take this as advice. This is not advice, but this is, again, we've talked about learning, things. What is one thing that you've learned with, doing the financial side of things that maybe you wish you had known back at the beginning of your career?
Number one, starting to save right away when I started, and not saying, oh, well, I have a pension, so I'm all set. And number two is definitely living within my means and learning how to live on my base pay, so that I wasn't relying on income on overtime income for my lifestyle needs. When I was able to put myself in a situation where all of my overtime income was for extras, my life changed.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'll drop something in there because obviously I've got, financial advisor as well. Not that I practice it much anymore, but yeah, live off that base pay and take a percentage and invest it.
Yep.
Take a percentage of your pay and invest it. Find somebody who's very good. Find a financial advisor like, Ryan here, or somebody to help you invest that money, but take a percentage before it even comes into your bank account, or as soon as it's in your bank account, it's gone and there's no way to touch it.
Pay yourself first.
Pay yourself first from your own pay. I was in the protection side of stuff, so I did all the insurances and that. Do you do insurance, or you just do investing side of stuff, or what kind of realm, in case somebody wants to kind of reach out to you, Ryan, what area of financial advice do you specialize in?
I like to call it goal-based planning, and I provide all services from as simple as basic budgeting and understanding how pensions work to full focused and goal-based financial planning and everything in between. So it includes protection, investments, and everything in between.
All right, awesome. So when it comes to protection, what's your number one piece of knowledge, not advice, but knowledge around when it comes to, protection side of stuff? Because, we want to invest because that helps us for our future, but also protection helps us in those what if moments where we're like, oh shit, something happens. What would be your number one piece of knowledge for that, that you'd like to pass on?
Let's I guess without getting into specifics, because I don't want to cross over
Yeah.
the compliance line and get in trouble. So just speak with a trusted advisor and make sure you know what's important, and your trusted advisor is going to help you protect what's most important.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's real important. That's real important there, and I'll clarify that in a little bit. Is figure out what is important to you, and then talk to an advisor around protecting it.
Yep.
Because if you don't have what's important to you protected, then when shit hits the fan, and it will at some stage, it always does in different levels. You want to make sure it's protected. I was talking to a guy just the other day who wants to be a cop, and his house burned down
Oh,
a few months ago. His house and his family, his family member's house and they lost everything. So financial, and they had no house insurance. They had no contents insurance. So they literally had to start from square one.
ouch.
So those are the kind of things that you want to make sure that are in place, but also when it comes to, policing, highest rate of cancer out of pretty much any career. You want to make sure you're protected when it comes to, if you get cancer, family, health insurance, all those different things. And depending on where you are in the world, there's different regulations, different, things, blah, blah. So, so Ryan, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they want to either have a conversation with you about law enforcement, or they want to have a conversation with you about financial advice. Obviously, you're in the United States, so those that are in the U.S. can contact Ryan, or because I believe it's like it is here, you can't give advice to somebody who's outside the U.S. or even outside the area that you're licensed for.
Always up for a conversation. Just can't give.
Yeah. You can always reach out for a conversation, but might not necessarily be able to give you advice. So how does somebody get in touch with you, Ryan?
So I am on LinkedIn under my name. I am on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at financially.fit.cop. And my email is rchartrand13@gmail.com. It's my first initial, last name 13@gmail.com. And always looking to make new connections and make new friends and have great conversations like we just had.
Perfect. Awesome. I love it. Last question I always like to ask is, what would you say your top tip to self-happiness is?
I think what really helps me and has really helped calm me, especially over the last couple of years, and has just helped with my positive attitude, is always believing that everything that's happening is happening for you, not to you. And it can be as simple as just a bad day, whether you go out and you have a flat tire when you're trying to go to work. You take a deep breath. This is just a small challenge. It's making me stronger for anything else that may be in the pipeline to come later on.
Yeah, I love it.
Always.
I love it. I love it, Ryan. It is so true, and I live by that. I live by that as well. Everything's a challenge, not a struggle.
No problems, only challenges.
Yep, no problems, only challenges. And what do we do with challenges? We work our way through it, especially as first responders and law enforcement. So perfect. Well, guys, thanks for listening again, and make sure you like and subscribe to start with. But first off, just take one thing out of this. There has been a lot of really good stuff. I've really enjoyed this conversation, Ryan. So thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Chris.
And if you are struggling, or if you want to just learn more, you want to learn that internal purpose, as we talked about, that driver that keeps you centered. Reach out to us at team@createfromwhy.com, and we'll help you out. We'll organize a session for you to have that conversation and work through it, and then help you implement it into your life. Because as we've identified today, if you have that thing to focus on, it's a completely different career and change. But take the little things away from today. Remember, life is happening for you, not to you, as both Ryan and I have said. And enjoy life, because you only have one of them. And why have a miserable life when you can have an amazing life? So remember, my motto is always train hard, test easy, because when we, as law enforcement especially, we always trained extremely hard for situations so that when that situation or anything similar to it happened, it was a lot easier. So we also want to do that to our mind, train our mind hard, always getting knowledge in and always learning new things. So until next time, guys, thank you very much, and we will talk to you again soon.